Hey, welcome into another KATcast. Kevin Hilly, Aaron Hart, and Jordan J. Ooh, we're talking about true crime today. Big fascination with true crime these days. Books, movies, podcasts. I guess we're including ourselves in the podcast thing now too.
Well, I mean, one episode on it doesn't exactly. Yeah,
I wouldn't say. We're not a crime podcast.
Yeah,
No,
there
no.
are actual podcasts that's all they dedicate themselves to is true crime.
I know, Aaron,
Only
this is-
murders in the building, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I know this is a big interest of yours, true crime.
For me, I like the cold cases just because I'm hoping, especially with these cases that are 20, 30, 40 years old, or even some that are just 10 years old, that hopefully somebody who may know something, either the guilt finally gets to them
They come
or
forward and
they come forward with something, because you have to remember these people have families. They need closure.
Yeah, they're shattered lives.
Exactly.
Yeah,
This isn't, it's not just something for entertainment. These are real people and real lives. And the families need closures. In some cases, their loved ones were never found.
Mm-hmm.
They need to find their loved ones, put them to rest properly. So what I like about it now is there's so many different things that they can do forensically now that they couldn't do 20, 30 years ago, that some things are now being revisited. So a lot of these old cold cases are being revisited when some of these agencies do have time to revisit them.
And I know I mentioned before, I know there are some people, Aaron is not like this, but there are some people who have just sort of a morbid curiosity about this stuff.
Oh, definitely.
And also, as Aaron pointed out, I think a lot of the renewed attention on these cases now causes law enforcement and authorities to say, wait a minute, we hadn't considered this or whatever.
Sure.
Let's look at this. So actually, it's crazy because, true crime can include what we're talking about there. Serial killers.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you, I had one experience with somebody I worked with. If you ever heard of the story about James Cowan.
Hang on, he wasn't a serial killer.
No, he wasn't.
Right?
No,
Okay.
I was about to point that out.
Right.
But if you heard the story of James...
Bizarre story you're about to hear, by the way.
This is
crazy.
bizarre.
And Kevin knew this guy.
This is the guy I worked with another company quite a number of years ago. I was working the oldies station for this company, and I was doing the morning show, and he was on the news talk station, which was right in that same area. And one morning, I get done my show, and I'm just kind of looking out into the hallway, and I see him standing there being handcuffed by, I believe it was the Massachusetts State Police, had traveled to Missouri, if I'm not mistaken. It was either them or Missouri Highway Patrol. I'm not sure which ones at the time. But anyway, there he is being handcuffed, and I'm thinking, because I got no clue, I'm thinking, oh, this must be like a jail and bail thing they're doing, like a fundraiser.
Sure. Yeah.
Awareness or whatever.
Some kind of bit for radio. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
No, he was being pulled. They pulled him. He had just gotten into a break. And as he did, they walked into the studio and arrested him. And there he is being hauled off. As it turns out, he was wanted and later convicted for the murder of his wife.
Wow.
Doing, what's the thing they put in the drink?
He was putting antifreeze in her Gatorade.
Yeah.
So basically poisoning her drink.
She was not feeling well, and he kept saying, hey, you're dehydrated, you don't feel good, here, drink this.
There's a whole book that documents it. It's
I've
called
read the book.
Lie After Lie. And his name is James Cowan. And as I said, I didn't know him well, but I knew him enough as a coworker. Every once in a while, we would joke around. And one day we were showing old pictures of ourselves, and I had like a whole lot of hair in mine. And we're laughing about that. And he goes, oh, yeah, there's so much stuff about my life you don't even know. You'd be amazed. Whoa.
Yeah, whoa, right.
You know?
Hello.
So that was so he is put away for life, and he's never going to see the light of day as far as I can tell.
And he
and he was the nicest guy. That's the thing. He was a real friendly.
Here's the craziest thing.
Fun guy to work with.
Of like all these documentaries that I've watched of like true crime and stuff like that, a lot of people say that about these people that are like convicted, right? They're
charismatic narcissists.
They're very. That's how they're people, right? They know how to manipulate people. They know what to say to you. They know how to look very well.
NBC did a whole piece on him, and they interviewed people he worked with. I was not one of them because I didn't know him enough. But I mean, people that we work with now or have worked with in recent years were a part of that. And yeah,
And he would
You want to talk about being about like local, man. This is somebody who.
And he would put on kind of a performance, right? Because didn't he rent like a car and stuff like that?
Pretended, yeah. Supposedly he was working for ESPN and having this big job in Connecticut. And there were, again, the book is called Lie After Lie, to cover his tracks. Incredible.
Wow. People like that, I mean, how do you keep up with all the lies? I mean, eventually they all do come out.
Was there ever did you ever have like this weird ominous presence around him? Was there ever any kind of indication?
Did you ever have any inkling?
No, never. That's what I'm saying. Wow. Not a clue. He's just this guy I worked with, real friendly, very, real up on current events, and we could talk about a lot of different things. But again, we weren't friends, but we were just coworkers. I would see him at work, and that was because we worked for different stations. So he was doing a news talk station, I was doing mornings on an oldies station. So, but it's crazy to find that out about somebody that you're working so closely with later on. Like everybody's like, I had no clue. You know, it's funny. When the police showed up that day, we have at the time the person who we now have working at our front desk. At the time, she was working for that company as well, and she's just the nicest, sweetest lady.
Sure.
And the police show up and they say, "Hey, we're looking for James Cowan," and she goes, "Oh, he's on the air right now." And they said, "That's all right. We'll go get him." They walked downstairs to where the studio was. Wow. They weren't going to wait. They were ready to pull him off the air. Oh, it didn't matter if he was in mid-sentence. They were going to grab him. So it just, for the on-air sake, it happened, fortunately, that he had just gone into a break. And funny, he said to another person in that studio, "Hey, can you fill in for me? I'll be back in a little bit." "No, you're not."
It ain't happening, baby.
Show's done, dude.
Wow.
Amazing.
Live from prison.
Yeah.
I think what floors me about true crime or crime in general, especially modern day crime, we are all under constant surveillance. Yeah. So if you think you're going to get away with it, think again.
To get away
your phones are constantly listening to you.
Yeah. It's a whole new ballgame now. It's just a matter of time before somebody figures out a way to, you say a certain phrase or, a certain word so many times. And don't you think eventually it's going to tip off police? I mean, don't you think somebody's going to invent something like that? There is no real privacy anymore. The dawn of social media, of smartphones.
You would have to be insanely careful. I mean, like to
off the grid.
You got to be off the grid. You would have to. You couldn't have a cell phone on you. You couldn't have. I mean, you'd have to. It's impossible.
By the way, we're not giving you any tips.
No, not
just
giving
so you
tips
know.
on any of that. I'm just saying, like,
no.
It's not a wise idea. And like Aaron said, like with technology, like they're solving cases way back when. So even if you think, it's been 30 years, I got away with it. It's like you might be someone knocking on your door soon, you know?
What's amazing with forensics.
Either of you have any personal experience with anybody you knew or was connected in any way?
So I have two. There's one person I went to high school with, unfortunately passed away. And I'd say that because he was involved with, went to college at a different place out of state. Come to find out that there was actually a serial killer at this college campus getting people and dropping off their bodies. And it just so happened that unfortunately it was one of the people that I went to school with that they got. Another one was not to say any names or anything like that, but and then another one was someone that my wife went to college with. I'm trying to remember, it was either one of her softball friends or one of her sorority sisters. It was her sister that ended up getting kidnapped.
Wow.
All sorts of stuff. Kidnapped.
That's dark, man.
And didn't end well. So it's great. And when it hits close like that, it's weird. It's a very strange feeling when that happens.
Man.
Especially when when you've known them. Like when you've had interaction with
when
them.
there's that personal connection.
And it's
right.
Just, it's got it creeps you out.
It's a whole different thing than just looking in as a innocent observer or as a reader or whatever.
Yeah. I know with law enforcement, lots of forensics, it's all backlogged, and I know it takes lots of manpower and money and all of that to be able to run all of these old samples and everything. But, I still think it's hopeful that a lot of these old cases can be solved. But that's one thing that I do like about, Netflix and Hulu bringing up these old cases is the hopes that, again, somebody out there may know something. Somebody may say, okay, you know what? I've been silent long enough. I'm going to say something.
Right.
Or they may have more information. There was one I watched recently, and I believe it was in Long Island. And it was a guy who was a serial killer. And he was killing escorts. And he did that because he thought that would be people that nobody missed. Those are still people. Those are still women with families and with parents and with but I mean they ended up catching this guy. But for the longest time, I mean, it was like over a 25 year span. But a lot of it, they were able to, the earlier murders, they were able to track back to him through the forensics.
That's
which
incredible.
I just think, I mean, it is. It's amazing what they can do.
If you Google the word Hilly, you'll find my name in a lot of different places. You'll also find somebody named Marie Hilly, Audrey Marie Hilly, actually. It's crazy because I had an aunt named Marie Hilly. She was my father's sister-in-law, his brother's wife. Audrey Marie Hilly was a famous killer. They actually made a movie about. She was convicted in the 70s for killing her husband.
Wait a minute, this was your aunt?
No, this was not her. No. I'm saying she had the same name. That's what I'm saying. Marie Hilly. But I had an aunt, Marie Hilly. Okay?
Yeah.
God.
But this was Audrey Marie Hilly, but she was known a lot by Marie Hilly. But anyway, she was convicted of killing her husband in like the mid-70s. Wow. Attempted murder of her daughter. She went on the run. She changed identities. They made a whole movie about her.
Wow.
Anyway, she was sentenced to life in prison in 1983 for the 1975 murder of her husband. But she was living under, like I said, false identity. She was in New Hampshire running. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable story. But there was a TV movie about this too. So
okay, now I gotta check that out.
Okay.
What creeps me out the most is just like how I can't.
Disregard for human life. That's what bothers me.
Well, that and then like the fact that they just can go right back to normal, go right back to being like, you know what I mean? Right back to just working a normal job, being like, hey, Steve, how you doing? Or something, just like, you're like,
right.
Yeah.
Dude, you killed people last night,
that's
and you're just back to normal.
Can
have a double life like that.
Unreal. We're talking true crime today, and if maybe you've seen something that's interest of you, or what have you read or watched something or anything? I mean, share with us. Tell us what your thoughts are, and we'd like to hear about it as well. You know
what they say, I've seen like studies and evidence of this. Like women like true crime or seem to consume more content than men.
More so, yeah.
I wonder why that is. Do you have any idea?
I don't know. Aaron had an interesting point that I guess because women sometimes tend to be more vulnerable to maybe this kind of thing. So it's an education thing to a degree.
I think some ladies think, okay, well, how did they get, how were they a victim? Okay, well, if I learn, then maybe if I don't do that, then I won't become a victim. I think some women think that way. For me, I don't really think about that. For me, I just think more about how in watching this, I'm hoping at some point the victim's going to get justice, that the family's going to get closure.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense,
that in these documentaries, people are going to talk about, not so much to give the killer notoriety, that it's not about that.
As awful as these things are, that some good can come out of it.
Right. That somehow these victims are going to get some justice, that their families are going to get closure.
Yeah.
So I like to watch them just to like, honestly, to pick up cues, to be like, to see, because a lot of the times they interview the actual person, the killer or whatever, right? And so to like just kind of see how they interact or kind of see how they talk and stuff like that, to kind of, I don't know. I just like to be like, in real life, when I'm talking to people, if I can almost be like, could I spot someone that might be like, whoa, they might be a little different. That might be a
challenge.
Threat. You know what
because
I mean?
So many of these guys, I mean, the Gacy's and whatnot, they're charismatic and they're friendly and they're people you would like to be friends with.
But if you do notice one thing in those interviews, they all have one thing in common, and I like to call it the dead eyes. They can be all of this, but watch their eyes. There's nothing going on behind those. There's no empathy, no emotion, no nothing, and that's terrifying.
Yeah,
you are right. When they're like smiling, but you could just totally tell it's like,
there's nothing going on
genuine.
right here. Yeah.
It's amazing how people can put on a mask. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, even in fiction, it's funny. We were talking a little earlier with one of our coworkers. I mean, when you look at shows like Breaking Bad, Gus Fring. This is a little off, but I mean, Gus Fring.
Yeah.
He's a model of the community. The police love him, and he's a drug lord.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's running this drug empire.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Hide in plain sight.
right,
situation,
exactly.
Right? That's the thing.
Exactly.
Become a beloved figure of the community, do
Right.
some good, then they back you. It's
Yeah.
harder, for the.
And think about like
Even
Ted,
Walter White. He's
think
like,
about Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
because he
exactly.
looked
Bundy.
good, just because he looked like a decently well put together man, women loved him to the point where they were like, "No way, this gorgeous man couldn't have done what you said he did."
What blows my mind is some of these guys, after they go to prison, even after they've been convicted, women want to date them.
Isn't that nutty?
That-
How twisted is that?
Yeah, that's just all.
This is a guy who was convicted of murdering, in some cases, multiple people. You want to be with him, really?
Again, and
He
I
didn't
think
change overnight, sweetheart.
No.
I think a lot of that too is just maybe the whole obsession with the true crime thing in general,
And with
You know what I
celebrity
mean?
to a degree.
and that, right?
Yeah,
Of like you're
yeah.
like, because whether you like to admit it or not, they get a lot of recognition, they get a lot of notoriety from
Yep.
these things.
Yep.
And they eat that up.
Well, we're talking true crime here today. The fascination with it, and again, it's in the popular culture, and so we're just sharing our thoughts about what we've seen and our experiences with it and everything. So if you want to share, we've got a real handy email address for you.
Yeah, catcountry@mailzimmer.com. Let us know.
Love to hear from you. That wraps up this edition of the KATcast. Thanks for watching.